Blessings, good evening. It's Tuesday night, so we have some questions have come in to be answered, and we'll try our best. Dear Luang Por, I thank you for answering our questions, and I wish you well. Can you please advise if it's right that during meditation, should you lose your mindfulness and thoughts start creeping in, we should tell ourselves that this is normal since thought arises and ceases. I wish to know if we should wait for it to pass or fill our mind by contemplating Dhamma to replace the thoughts. Thank you. Very normal that we get lots of thoughts arising and passing as we try to meditate, and indeed all day long. And so one big part or aspect of meditation is we call the removal and or the replacement of distracting thoughts. So our number one priority, you might say, in formal meditation, sitting, walking meditation, is to establish mindfulness and clear comprehension. So knowing an object, such as the breath, or the recitation of Buddha, or any of the other usual meditation objects. You use that to focus your mind, to know your mind, you know where it is, and with clear comprehension of what you're doing and why. And that takes effort as well. So these are sort of three central qualities we are training and developing in meditation. Because if we don't have mindfulness, clear comprehension, it's very difficult to know anything other than just following the discursive thinking, the mental chatter, the reactions, and sometimes the sleepiness of the mind. But when you have sati, this presence of mind, and particularly when you're training it with a meditation object, you're keeping that object in mind, your mindfulness becomes much more continuous. The quality of knowing is, we say, established. So then you can know your experience of body and mind objectively and know it as Dhamma without creating suffering or reacting with attraction and aversion to whatever experience we have at that time. So of course, as you're practicing, thoughts will come up from the first moment. But as mindfulness improves through the practice, the ability for thought to come in and take over your mind, and here I mean any thought, good, bad, anything, is reduced. Because you are, as you say, now filling your mind with mindfulness, the object. You're getting to know your object better because that's where you're paying attention, keeping the breath in mind, for instance. So thoughts will still arise, of course, but over time and through practice and training, they'll get less invasive, less overwhelming. You know, a bit like on a sunny day, flies or mosquitoes may buzz up to you, but you just notice them and you just shoo them away, or maybe they even just go away by themselves without you having to do anything. So your relationship to thinking changes, and you can see thought as just thought, arising, ceasing, what we call mental formations. There's a sense of separation, a sense of mindfulness, and you could say peace or calm that allows you to see thought but without getting too involved with the thoughts and the details. because normally we are getting obsessed and caught up with every little detail, and much of our stress, suffering manifests like that, doesn't it? Reacting to things, creating stories, and so on. But of course, as mindfulness improves, we can also direct the mind to know a specific thing or investigate the causal conditions of different states of mind that arise, different moods, different attachments and clinging we have. You can then turn to contemplate, investigate. As you're mindful, you can look more closely and in a more detached way, so you're not just getting lost again in moods and endless trains of thought, but you're seeing thought as a phenomenon that arises, passes away. Feelings in the body and even mental feeling you can see more clearly as conditions of mind. Even memory, a memory pops up, and before it's triggered a train of thought, you may see a memory, and you may see the kind of thinking reaction that it may trigger, but you don't necessarily have to get lost in that as usual if you're more mindful. So your ability to contemplate your own body and mind and experience as Dhamma in a more detached, objective way improves, and you can see things as impermanent, unsatisfactory, subject to change, and not self. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts are mental states, mental conditions that arise, pass away according to the causes and conditions, and ultimately you are not your thoughts, and that's a huge insight whenever it arises, and that allows you to let things go. But mindfulness is the starting point, then the insight or wisdom comes in, and the ultimate and the result is letting go and release from attachment. Another question from the Majjhima Nikaya 129, quote, "A fool who used to be a glutton here and did bad deeds there, after death is reborn in the company of those who feed on grass, feed on dung, who are born, live and die in the darkness," etc. Does this sutta mean that whoever is greedy and deluded will eventually be reborn into the animal realm? Well, luckily, as we know, everything is uncertain. So both the good you do is uncertain, the bad you do is uncertain, in the sense that to be reborn as an animal, in the Buddhist description, in the Buddha's words and the Buddhist description, it's not necessarily you just have a bit of greed here and there through your life. I think we've all had that, and probably it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? When you are mindful, maybe you can catch greed and let it go. See it as impermanent, not self. When we're not mindful, we're back in with the greed. So to be reborn as an animal would probably take quite regular greed occurring through life, and I mean strong greed that may lead you to break precepts, harm others, harm oneself, and not much right view or understanding that sees greed as a cause of suffering, as a mental defilement in all its forms, whether it's coveting, avarice, greed for things of other people that might lead you to steal or take advantage of others in some way. Greed in the form of lust, greed in the form of attachment to fame, fortune, power, what we call the worldly dhammas. There's subtle greed, there's coarse greed. But the important thing is how you manage it and cope with it, even if you can't yet see it as impermanent and let go of it. Recognizing greed as an unwholesome mental state more and more through your practice is an important point that we develop and try to develop quite quickly, what we call right view, that separates between wholesome and unwholesome. or skillful and unskillful. And then knowing a certain course of action that you're intending to do or say is rooted in greed, is harming others, harming oneself. One works to restrain that course of action. And this is the practice of sila, moral integrity, based on the understanding of what is wholesome and unwholesome, restraining, abandoning those intentions, not carrying them through. So, everyone who practices Buddhism will perhaps aspire to keep the 5 precepts, but there will be times when we have strong greed, anger, fear, confusion arise. As a mental state, if it's also met with some right understanding and some sense of what is good and bad karma, how can I restrain this, then it's not necessarily making a heavy karma, it's a mental state you're experiencing, but then sooner or later you work out how to let it pass. When you give in, that's where the problems start, particularly giving in a way that harms oneself or others. So, when we become obsessive, hurtful of others through speech, through action, then the heavier karma is made, and if that's made repeatedly, perhaps can lead to rebirth in an animal realm. Even in this life, your mind coarsens and darkens, so you become addicted to things like drinking, drugs, gambling, pornography, violence, theft, the sort of things that the precepts are restraining, those kind of activities. If you're regularly engaging in them, your mind tends to darken, become coarser. Maybe you're setting up the causes for not such a good rebirth, and even in this life your mind is just not peaceful, not at ease, I would say. And also perhaps wrong views, extreme wrong views, especially if you're passing on your wrong views to others, encouraging others in their wrong view as well. You're not seeing the difference between good and evil, good and bad karma, strange beliefs that people get caught into, beliefs in annihilationism, nihilism, beliefs in eternalism, all kinds of things people can have. So wrong view can also be a cause for rebirth in the lower realm. And even in this life, it just changes your perception of things, and the mind goes darker and more unhappy, and maybe you don't realize because it's delusion. So the 5 precepts are a good way to train, and understanding wholesome, unwholesome karma, using that as a way to reflect on what you're involved with. And if you're practicing meditation regularly, you also get to see more, on a more refined level, greed, anger and delusion, and you start recognizing how it's influencing you. What triggers anger, what triggers greed. And then you've got a chance, as you meditate more, to reflect on that and abandon greed, anger and delusion in their different ways. What is the difference between a novice nun and a trainee nun? Well, we have, in Buddhism, we have the 2 major schools of Buddhism, Theravada, Mahayana. Both have nuns, but there's a variety of different modes or types of nun in each. So sometimes they define the terms slightly differently, and even monastery to monastery they might. Generally speaking, in our tradition, and to somewhat mirrored in the Mahayana tradition, but not completely, we have trainee postulant anigarikas or anigarikas who come to the monastery, maybe people interested to become a monk or a nun, and they profess that interest and start training. Usually they shave their head, wear white, keep the 8 precepts. So sometimes they're referred to as trainees or anigarikas or anigarikas. And after a suitable period of training, which could be shorter or longer, depending on the place, the monastery, the individual, then they may take samanera vows, the 10 precepts of a samanera, whether that's a samanera, samaneri, female novice or female or male novice. And again, for a period of time, they may train like that and then maybe go on to take the higher ordination of a monk or a nun. So it's a step-by-step process. And you have to find out in the monastery that you attend or the tradition you hold to that you're following, how do they define the terms. But novice usually means 10 preceptor, whether it's monk or nun. Trainee usually refers to a postulant, somebody who's aspiring to train to become a monk or a nun, but they're only just beginning. But there could be slight variations on how each place defines them, those terms. 3. How to examine one's level of saddha and how to continue to cultivate it into a power. The power. We like this word because we're always suffering from tiredness, weakness, etc. So the word power is something we like to boost our power of patience, of energy, so power drinks, energy drinks, and saddha is sort of linked to that as well, isn't it? Saddha is we often compare it to the fuel of the practice. It's the initial faith, confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the teachings and the way of practice, and maybe an individual teacher as well. And from saddha we get chanda, this word chanda, the willingness, the desire to practice, the willingness to practice, to commit to practice. Is the opposite of doubt, stubbornness, inactivity, and so on. Faith gives rise to chanda, which is the arising of a form of energy. So it's like the fuel. So often we talk about how you have those rockets going out of the world to the moon or somewhere, and they have lots of fuel which is ignited and gets really hot and pushes it out of the atmosphere, because that's quite a big thing to get out of the pull of gravity in the atmosphere. And then as they get out of the atmosphere, they drop a lot of the fuel part of the rocket, so it's a smaller rocket propelled on now by the power of the initial thrust of the fuel. So faith is a bit like that to start with. It's pushing us into the practice, taking on precepts, committing to practice with a meditation object, reflecting on Dhamma, listening to Dhamma. That all takes faith to get us going. But as you practice more, maybe wisdom, precepts, mindfulness, samadhi, wisdom, these qualities are developed more, and they kind of pull us along. The momentum of the practice is supported not just by faith, the initial faith, but now through mindfulness, wisdom, and other qualities. So it's definitely a power. It's one of the spiritual powers, the bala, the 5 bala, which are also considered as spiritual faculties, indriya. But in the end, there's no way you can practice without some faith. However, faith matures with the practice and becomes mixed with true knowledge and vision of the way things are, wisdom and insight, which supports faith. So it's no longer just belief, just acceptance of the teachings. It's also seeing for oneself, confirming what one had faith in. Then it becomes something you actually see. So that one's faith is a power because it becomes something you trust in, and also it's intuitive. You have faith in in the Buddha, the Dhamma, Sangha, the way of practice, the Noble Eightfold Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. And that means that some of your faith is, through the practice, is just knowing this is the right way of practice. This is leading to the abandoning of defilements, and faith becomes something very ingrained as it becomes a power. Maybe faith also recognizes the good qualities in others, in teachers and other practitioners. As one practices and sees these qualities in oneself, one also recognizes defilements in others and in oneself. So the knowledge of the path and what is the correct way of practice and what is not becomes much more intuitive and much clearer to the practitioner. And partly that is the power of faith. It's led on to this good practice and then the skill that comes with the practice. Of course, if faith drops, it's not yet fully established, then we waver in our faith, in our determination to practice. We have doubt, so it could lead to turning away from the practice of meditation, not keeping precepts, moving out of the path of practice maybe because of faith is shaken. So when we don't yet have strong faith, our faith may be supported by external conditions like teachers, Sangha, the words of the Buddha, the teachings, the practices we do. They support our faith, but say your teacher disappears or does something wrong or disrobes, if it's a Sangha member, or your teacher, even if it's a lay teacher, starts to spout wrong views and things, then if your faith is not yet well developed as a power, it can be shaken. You might turn away from Buddhism or a particular way of practice or a teacher because your faith is not established well and it's knocked or rocked by conditions. So if your faith is not a power yet, then maybe also, say you get ill and you're so weak physically and mentally that you give up on the Dhamma and blame the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, or think, I don't have the karma to practice and I'm ill. So you let your mind go all over the place, say, or start not keeping the precepts because you're weakened or in this state where your faith has fallen away. Can happen. So it is one important part of the practice to practice to the point where faith is unshakable because it's based on personal knowledge as well as belief. And whatever happens, you're ill, there's a world war, disaster, you still have your faith as an internal quality, and it's powerful because it's not easily shaken anymore. If you get to that point, then it's going to keep propelling you. It's like the rocket fuel will keep propelling you towards Nibbana, the full letting go of all attachment. So there's one way to reflect on your practice, your level of faith and how it's leading you on in the practice. Another question, will Panya gradually be developed through sitting, and how? Well, it's one quality you can develop in the practice and in all postures, like all the different Dhamma qualities, such as Panya is wisdom or insight, Sila is moral integrity, Samadhi is stillness, concentration. So all these three can be developed in all postures, not just sitting. And we quite often do associate meditation with the posture of sitting. And indeed, it's possibly the posture that most people get enlightened and have breakthroughs in their development of insight and their realizations. I would say probably in the sitting posture, most commonly. But it doesn't mean to say the other postures it's not possible. And standing, walking, and even lying down, say particularly if you're ill or injured, one can still practice and reflect on the Dhamma. So Panya, wisdom, Bharami, and the wisdom faculty or wisdom power is developed through developing knowledge and vision of the way things are, insight into impermanence, unsatisfactoriness or suffering, and not self. And we don't just develop that when we're sitting. In all postures it can be developed, and some people, walking meditation is their natural posture for contemplation, so try that as well. Or in different situations, walking, eating, bathing, going here, going there, and the non-traditional postures of not always seen as a posture to practice mindfulness in, but maybe broaden your approach so that you can cultivate wisdom and insight in any posture, in any activity. But in the sitting posture, wisdom depends on mindfulness. Mindfulness also depends on sila. When we don't use sila as a guideline for our behavior, our mind tends to be easily knocked. It wavers, it's agitated, it's caught into regret, remorse, doubt, worry, guilt. So as we improve our sila, this improves the strength of mindfulness, but that also requires meditation. As we sit, we require patience, effort to turn the mind to be mindful of an object, such as the breath. It requires effort, requires repeated effort. So often we gain more wisdom and experience over time. As we can sit longer, the mind settles down and the quality of mindfulness may improve through repeated and regular effort. But also wisdom can be a condition for improving mindfulness, because as you see, say, impermanence in your thoughts, in your emotions and sensations in your body, well, you may get quicker to abandon them, let them go as distractions, quicker to see the nature of feeling as just feeling, arising, passing away, thought arising, passing away. So wisdom will be a condition for mindfulness to arise, and mindfulness a condition for wisdom to arise. So these two qualities support each other. But it's one aspect of the practice, learning how to sit longer through different mental states and feelings of pain and pleasure without giving into them, or not giving into them too much, so that you can work through them and see them as impermanent and let them go as you're sitting. And the longer you can sit, and the better the quality of mindfulness you can develop, or the more chance of seeing and letting go of different attachments, mental states that come up. And keep going. So patience is also a big factor in all of this. This is why Luang Por Chah would get monks to sit longer than they might naturally want to sit, and not just monks, laity as well. So he'd give a long Dhamma talk. In the way of practice in the old days, as the Dhamma talk is going, you don't get up and move around. If you're watching this talk at home, maybe you're getting up, moving around, doing other things. Who knows? Maybe you're sitting there eating your noodles as I talk. But if you're in a monastery, you're with the teacher, you sit until the end of the teaching session. So if Luang Por Chah chose to talk for a few hours and go on late into the night, you have to sit, go through pain in the legs, sleepiness, different mental states, some aversion perhaps, some doubt, why are we doing this? Some desire, fantasy comes up, just to pass the time, because you're sitting so long, you start fantasizing, imagining different things you like or want to do. But if you keep sitting, you keep coming back to this same point, the present moment awareness with the breath, and you're seeing all the other stuff as impermanent, as not self. So this is one way Ajahn Chah got people to burn off through patient effort, sometimes mindful, sometimes not, but seeing the impermanent, changing nature of the mental conditions. They arise, they cease, and the longer you practice, the longer you sit still and watch, the better you'll do it, and the more things you'll see as arising, passing away. And maybe samadhi arises as you let go of different things through patient sitting, the body and mind become very still, and then you can see all the mental formations, the memories, the feelings as impermanent. What's impermanent is not really you, is it? It's a temporary formation that comes up, passes away. So Ajahn Chah said, it's like coming and sitting at a still forest pool and then seeing all the creatures that come to drink there and all the wonderful experiences, just sitting and watching. So as the stillness comes up, it changes your experience into Dhamma rather than always reacting and suffering with everything. You can see even unpleasant things as Dhamma, and with a sense of separation, the mind and what the mind knows, and the sense of letting go. Another question. Whatever arises, that is just the way it is. But shouldn't it be that everything arises as a result of what we have done? Well, correct. On the one hand, you could say, yes, everything that arises is just the way it is. It just is what it is. On the other hand, you could say, yes, everything arises as a result of what we have done, past karma. That's true as well. I think it's two sides of the same thing. As wisdom and understanding develops through meditation and watching the mind, well, you see these two things. When mindfulness is clear, continuous, and you're cultivating insight, say, into impermanence, not self, well, you may just see thoughts that arise as that's just the way it is, thoughts arising, passing away. But another aspect of that is also, as your investigation and observation deepens, you also perhaps become familiar with what is the cause for something to arise, what triggers it. The feeling that arises triggers craving, which manifests as different kinds of thought. The feeling that comes in is past karma. And then maybe there's nothing much you can do about that because it's already been set in place by your past actions, your attachments, your previous behavior, whether it's recent or a long time ago. It's constantly coming back to us in the form of feeling, whether it's just mental memories and mental conditioning, or actual experiences in the world, what we see, what we hear from outside. This is constantly triggering Vedana, feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, arising. And this is all old karma coming back to us moment by moment by moment. Then the new karma is, well, what happens next? So it may prompt craving of one kind or another, essential craving, delighting in, averse to, liking, disliking, wanting, and then we call it becoming. Your mind is taking up this endless craving and attachment we fall into, and it develops this sense of self, the attachment to the sense of self, and that will also prompt more karma making, more doing, more action, and it's just a cycle, isn't it? But if you introduce the Dhamma of sila, samadhi, panya, mindfulness, insight, then you're interrupting that cycle of creating craving, attachment, becoming based on feeling. And you get to learn this. When you're mindful, craving doesn't arise. When you lose your mindfulness, you're back with craving. What stimulates the craving, the sort of external sense contact and the feeling arising, how it stimulates craving, you're seeing that over time through practice. How things can pass away, how they can pass away quickly when you're experiencing suffering, mental suffering. How do I end this quickly? By seeing it as not self, letting go. So what you've said is right, but it depends at what point in the process you're observing and contemplating, You may be contemplating from a place of complete just equanimity. Everything is just as it is. But sometimes you're also looking more closely at cause and effect and seeing that in an objective way without getting involved personally or creating an ego or person out of it. You're just observing, oh, this leads to that. When I have a painful feeling, then maybe some negative thoughts and aversion arises, and I get a stream of thought based on that painful feeling. So you're looking more at cause and result. But that also leads to equanimity, because you want to stop suffering, so you start letting go of this result that you can now understand how it's triggered and how it's caused. So I think for most people this is going on over long periods of time, over repeated practice. But the aim is to establish enough mindfulness so you can observe from a place of detached awareness, equanimity. Dear Ajahn, I've recently found a renewed passion for meditation. Good. I've been meditating almost daily and for hours on weekends. Very good. This level of enthusiasm is new to me, and I'm not sure what triggered it. While I appreciate this newfound zest, I'd like to share some challenges I'm facing and seek your guidance. During meditation, I've noticed that my mind feels dull and often drifts between thoughts and breath, sometimes without my immediate awareness. This dullness sometimes makes me feel drowsy, and I occasionally take a nap before resuming my practice, which seems to help. I've become more calm and grounded in my daily life and work, thanks to your teachings and the Dhamma protection. However, I haven't yet achieved a state of no thoughts or sustained clarity during meditation. Currently, I can only sit for about an hour before needing to stretch my legs, which naturally disrupts my focus. Given these challenges, could you kindly offer any advice to help me improve my meditation? Well, it sounds like you're doing quite well. You're on and up, aren't you? You've got faith and chanda, you've got desire to practice. You recognize some of the problems, dullness, which is a big one, pain in the body, which is a challenge. So these are all very normal things that every meditator has to deal with. The thing to do is treat them normally. Don't let them trigger and cause, disappointment, sadness, blaming, negativity. Just accept it's just normal that you'll have dullness or drowsiness from time to time. You'll have thoughts come up. You may have a desire that you want to experience a state of stillness where you have no thoughts, but that will come by itself. Go back to the causes that will lead onto that, the mindfulness, the effort to bring up mindfulness in meditation, in all postures and even in daily life. As you say, as you practice meditation regularly, it should make you bring you more states of calm, stability, steadiness in your mind and in work and other aspects of your daily life. And that's all good. Keep going. Just keep going, and perhaps when you have more time, say on weekends, if you're meditating more and you have a bit of energy and interest, sometimes we'll try some new things or try pushing yourself to sit longer or walk meditation longer. And often that's a way to improve the level of your mindfulness, is to sit and then walk and then sit again, alternating for a period of time. And just keep improving that, refining that level of mindfulness. And you may find sometimes the thoughts fade away because you've seen them all before, you know them all before. Your mind is not so keen to pick them up again because you've seen them before. So then your mind might just go quiet. And one of the obstacles on the more refined end of the practice is the desire for results. You're a little bit more peaceful than usual, and you want some real stillness where there's no thought and your mind to be just radiant and just knowing the present moment. But you really don't need to think too much about that. Just keep coming back to the mindfulness and this refiner mindfulness directed to maybe the breath going in and out. And just trust, if you keep improving mindfulness, you may have periods where the mind goes very quiet, thoughts seem to drop away, the mind seems more empty. But as you pointed out, when your mindfulness gets very refined, there's not a lot of stimulation now. You're relying solely on the continuity of your mindful awareness, your clear comprehension, your effort. If effort drops, it's very easy to go into dullness, because you're sitting still maybe for a long time, you feel more relaxed, calm, then you go to dullness. And dullness can be there even if you're still awake. Your mind is just kind of not fully aware of the breath anymore. It's just in a kind of vacant state because there's no stimulus, not much pain, not much pleasure. You just go into dullness. You have to watch that. Or what often follows on is actual drowsiness. And you have to learn the difference between drowsiness that is from just dullness and lack of awareness, lack of attention on your object, and drowsiness coming because you're very tired. And as you say, sometimes you do have to take a nap, but you have to learn the difference through practice. But I would say just keep going. Sounds like you're on the right track, pardon me. You're on the right track and you need to just keep going, keep practicing. Ajahn, please teach us how to develop enthusiasm for the practice and to have true metta for ourselves. Well, that is both a cause and a result. Metta is goodwill, loving kindness, and practice really is the whole of the practice is metta. All the help we get from teachers and Dhamma friends, what we call Kalyano mitta, is metta. Mitta and metta from the same root. So Dhamma friends, good friends. We get teachings. Some of the Dhamma friends are distant, so like you read suttas or read a book or hear a talk online from a teacher you're not actually with. They're still coming from metta, goodwill, shared compassion, kindness. But sometimes we receive life support, fellow practitioners give us emotional support, words of encouragement. They meditate with us, or we're with a teacher who's giving us life, direct teaching. This is all metta from the outside. And then metta from the inside, your wish to improve and find more happiness, to overcome your suffering, to learn the Dhamma, to go beyond suffering. This is all coming from metta. So it's sort of synonymous with the whole of the practice. Metta for oneself, and naturally that will lead on to more compassion for oneself and compassion for others. The more you understand yourself, the more you understand others. And it's also quite an energizing quality. If you consciously cultivate metta in meditation and just as a general attitude in your life, you'll find it does carry you through all kinds of suffering, gives you patience, gives you a good attitude to deal with the problems with other people, with yourself, health problems, other issues that come up in your life. Metta is a very energizing thing, but you also have to manage it. Metta for other people can be very draining physically and mentally, so you sometimes have to balance it with metta for yourself and have a bit of seclusion or rest for yourself as the metta comes out, and then you have more metta time and energy for others as well. So it's both a skill but also an attitude and a central quality to our practice. And out of metta and using metta as a foundation, many other good qualities arise. Patience, energy, even mindfulness can be prompted by metta, because you're willing to go through the obstacles and the difficulties to improve your level of mindfulness. And also wisdom. Wisdom supports metta, and wisdom arises from metta. Wisdom sees that metta is an impermanent mental state, so sometimes it's there, sometimes it's gone, so you don't attach to it too much. But it also prompts wisdom because as you have more metta, you understand yourself, then you understand the world and other people better. So it can constantly feed into and support wisdom and understanding as well. So it's very central to our practice. So I would recommend every day develop part of your meditation time, develop the quality of metta, goodwill. Put it into practice as well in the way you deal with the world and relate to the world. But also learn how to practice it skillfully. Quite a lot of questions tonight. Thank you, Venerable, for so much wisdom. I really needed it. But when feelings of restlessness, despair, depression, and worthlessness and pain are persistent, they are hard to accept. It's hard to accept the way it is without some subconsciously wanting things to change. Even though I am able to fully let go at times, at other times, Mara overpowers me. From someone who was so motivated to sit through extreme pain for hours, leading an extremely disciplined life, come what may, I've come a long way. I want to be disciplined, but my whole being rebels, as it has seen extremely harsh discipline has led to nothing. This is not nibbida, for true detachment should have given rise to sammajnana, dasana, right view, right vision, and should have reinforced samadhi, right view, but far from it. Lumpur, please help me. I need strength to walk the path again. Much gratitude and reverence. Your humble servant. Well, you're describing something again is quite normal and common. Sometimes our effort in the practice is imbalanced. We have periods where we try really hard and sometimes we try too hard and we push ourselves too much, too strict, sitting with pain, cutting off all forms of pleasure, being super ascetic, super strict, and then of course you get the backlash when we feel lack of motivation, dull, dry, fed up. Associate practice with misery because it involves renunciation, meditation, pain, suffering. So you have to know how to skillfully relax a bit in a skillful way where you're not increasing defilement, but you're kind of relaxing within the practice. So sometimes more samatha meditation, just bringing the mind to a place of peace, relaxed awareness, focused on an object that is quite pleasant. So metta meditation is a good one, reflecting on sila, recollecting the good things you've done in your life, the good things other people have done, recollecting teachers, the Buddha himself or other teachers, their qualities, their life, stories, things you remember about them. All of these are quite uplifting. Other practices such as dana, helping people, helping society, these can also help. But of course, as you say, there's a difference between seeing Dhamma and this leading to what we call disenchantment, nibbida, where you're tired of following, craving, greed, anger, delusion, and you can see it only leads to suffering, so you tire of it, so you quite naturally start letting go of craving. Nibbida is a natural result of clear seeing of the way things are. You can't force it. When we force it, it tends to go to aversion. So the meditator says, I just want nibbana now, I'm fed up with life. We sympathize, of course, but we tend to that tends to be coming from aversion, because you're fed up. You're fed up with your own craving and attachment, but you haven't let go of it, so you're fed up and you want to get rid of it. So it's going back into annihilation or aversion. You're fed up with the world, the problems of the world, so it's subtle or not so subtle aversion coming up. It's not nibbida. Nibbida is a very natural weariness of craving and attachment, and it's a maturing of insight, a maturing of view, insight, where you just naturally drop trains of thought, views, wrong views, attachments that you're recognizing because you know they lead to suffering. Don't want to suffer anymore, you can see they're leading to suffering, so you naturally put them down. It's very light. There's no force. It's not forced on you, it's not coming from aversion, which is a form of pushing away, wanting to get rid of, mild or extreme hatred of the world. It's a very light letting go, where the mind is quite naturally turning away from what is causing suffering, staying with the wholesome, staying with the clarity of insight, mindfulness, and the path factors. And there's a whole lightness and brightness about it. So it's unfortunate, but sometimes we have to go through a bit of suffering before we realize where we're going wrong. So be very patient, but reflect, review your practice and where you need to adjust. And come back to that which uplifts you, so that then you can see suffering from a place of well-being, contentment, and that will make it easier to let go of the causes of suffering. The wrong thinking, the wrong view, the attachments, the craving that leads to suffering. You'll let go of it easier and better because you're coming from a place of well-being and wholesome, skillful insight. Another question. Is planning about the future a mental karma, or until it is put into action, then it becomes karma? And has this vibhaka karma? Planning about the future. Well, that's thinking about the future based on current knowledge, past knowledge, memories, desire. So if desire, meaning craving, slips into your thinking, then it will become negative karma. And it will become conditioned maybe by greed, anger, delusion. I want this, I don't want that. You can see how we do this. You make, you're thinking of the future and you're making a plan. You say, oh, I've suffered so much with this person or this situation in the past, I never want that again. So you're setting yourself up for a fall or for suffering if you can't control things so much. Maybe that thing you're planning to not have to deal with ever again, not see, not get involved with, then it happens. It's like, you're caught out again. So all plans have to be developed with the perception of impermanence, uncertainty. Not wrong to sometimes plan. We have to plan for work, for life, for healthcare, for interaction with our family, friends, work colleagues, or meditators if you're in a monastery with other Sangha members. Of course we make plans. Ideally your plans are to do good things that will promote your practice, your abandoning of defilements, and maybe helping others. But you have to have that awareness of uncertainty as you plan, so that it doesn't lead into more suffering when things don't turn out quite the way you expected, because you'll never know in advance exactly what's going to happen. But the uncertainty, the reflection on uncertainty protects you from getting too attached to a fixed plan or a fixed perception of how you want things to be, how you expect things to be. You just keep that awareness, the mindfulness and the awareness of uncertainty in the present moment as you plan, and that should help you not to fall into more stress and suffering based on craving. But you have to keep vigilant, because craving loves to slip in where you're not looking. It'll slip in Like if you live in the forest like this, if you have a kitchen with food, then you leave the door open at night and the mouse will run in very quickly. So you have to keep the door shut. Don't let the mouse of craving slip into your planning. And even the view underlying it, are you just scheming, trying to get more pleasure that's only going to hurt you later because you get attached to it, or disappointed when you lose it or don't get it? So it's not just craving that slips in, it's also your underlying view of the whole thing. So keep mindful, keep vigilant, and everything is uncertain. Next question. If this is the case, few are the beings who, on passing away from the Deva and human realm, are reborn amongst human beings. Far more are the beings who are reborn in hell, in the animal womb, in the domain of the hungry ghosts. Therefore, where did we as human beings come from? Since it's even harder for beings in the lower realms to be reborn as humans, correct? Well, I think these are quotes from the Buddha. So, this is what the Buddha pointed out. It's very easy after we die for the consciousness to arise in one of the lower realms, because it's very easy to form attachments, to follow craving through our life, and that won't stop at the moment of death, that will continue. So it's easy to fall away from the good Dhamma, from sila, samadhi, panya, from the path towards more unwholesome states of mind. And you can prove that right today. You don't have to wait till the end of your life. How easily does your mind fall away from sila, samadhi, panya in its thinking, in its attachment, in its view? It's more difficult to maintain the good Dhamma, sila, samadhi, panya, dana, sila, bhavana, generosity, kindness, mindfulness, insight, patience, all the good qualities. How well can you maintain them? So it's the path or not the path. This is the challenge we face practicing what the Buddha taught. And he's just saying, be careful, be warned that it's easy to fall away into unwholesome, unskillful actions, unskillful thinking. These days we love to have statistics and percentages, so we haven't got, unless you've got psychic powers and can go and talk to one of those devas who sits there ticking off, you go there, hell realm, heaven realm, back as a human. Statistically we haven't got the numbers to be able to prove it and say convincingly to anyone, 80%, 90% of beings are being reborn there, 10% here, whatever. So you take the Buddha's word, but it makes sense, doesn't it? You notice your own mind. We love to fall into greed, anger and delusion easily. So work hard not to do that. Keep working at it. It's hard to keep the precepts purely, but keep working at it. It's hard to maintain mindfulness in meditation, but keep working at it. You're going in the right direction when you apply effort to the practice. And he's just warning you of the dangers. So some human beings are born from heaven realms. Some beings are born from animal realms, hell realms. We don't know, but we have to work on the practice as we are right here, right now. Don't speculate too much on the past and the future. I would focus more on the present and the qualities that you're developing right here, right now. And at least if you've tasted some of the peace of keeping precepts, meditating, some of the peace that comes from understanding the Dhamma, insight into the Dhamma, it's true. It can uplift your mind, help you to get through some suffering, let go of that suffering. If you've seen that, then that can motivate you to keep practicing. That's good enough. Last question. One of my colleagues is very generous to people, but he still goes fishing and drinks a lot of alcohol. What would be the vipaka karma for this being? Not sure, is it? Depends how strong the conditioning factors are for the fishing and the drinking of alcohol. There are people, we mentioned, I think one guy is mentioned in the sutras who became a sotapanna right at his death, and he was previously a drinker. So it's never too late to relinquish drinking and keep the 5 precepts. Better late than never. So you could wish that for him. If you can talk to him and encourage him, or bring him to other people who have given up drinking, encourage him, that's good. Talk to him about the effects of fishing. Even if you catch a fish and you don't kill it or eat it, you put it back, you still hurt it. You just maybe go with him one day and sit there as he catches a fish and he says, "Oh, this is a big one." And he takes the hook out of the mouth and you just point out, "Oh, this fish looks like it's suffering." I don't know, you've got to be creative here. See if you can get him to reflect on the pain he's inflicting on those fish. If the fish could talk, it would say, "Don't do this." When fish are being hurt, harmed, threatened, killed, they swim away, don't they? When you feed fish, they swim towards you because you're being kind to them. When you try to harm them, they try to get away. It's telling you something. Fish feel pain, fish don't want to die. Even bodhisattvas can be reborn as fish. Be careful. Don't kill fish if you can. Avoid it, and don't even harm them in fishing as a sport where you just catch them and throw them back. I would recommend see if you can change to other activities. Perhaps one of the best ways to change your practices, like killing or drinking alcohol, is meditate. Work at bringing up mindfulness, listening to Dhamma, bringing up mindfulness, reflecting on Dhamma. Then you may get the insight to see, "Oh, what I'm doing is not good." You quite naturally, as you become more sensitive and more mindful, you might feel some of that pain or witness the confusion of your own mind when you drink. How it affects you physically, mentally. You become more aware of that as you meditate more, or maybe you notice it in others as well. So getting the person to meditate would be ideal, listening to the Dhamma, reflecting on Dhamma, on karma and results of karma. Anything you can do to help them. And sometimes these things take a while. You keep gently encouraging them to reflect on their actions until one day maybe they're willing to try. So partly it's your friendship, partly it's themselves opening up to the Dhamma. And some people open up quickly, some take a lifetime. And you just have to see what you can do for them. And you can always meditate and wish them, in your meditation, wish them well, meditate, spread metta to them, and that may also help the arising of skillful thinking. Maybe they can change. So, a lot of questions tonight. We finished there. We wish you all well with your practice, and see you again sometime.